She was known across the stars. Every world feared her name, every army feared her strength. She was not just a warrior, she was a living legend. Her armor was made from the bones of creatures she had killed, and her blade had tasted the blood of hundreds. No one dared to face her unless they were ready to die. But she had one rule, one vow, one promise. She said again and again in front of all her enemies, in front of all who came to fight her, "I will obey only the one who can defeat me." It was her code of honor, her way of life. She believed no one could ever win against her, and so her promise was safe. She believed she would fight forever, unbeaten, unbroken, untamed. Many came, giants from other planets, beasts from faraway systems, and soldiers bred only for war. They all fell. Some begged for mercy. Some never rose again. And after every battle, she stood tall, her vow untouched, her loyalty unclaimed. But then, something strange began. Whispers spread across the galaxy, not of another giant, not of another beast, but of something smaller, something weaker, something fragile, a human. At first she laughed. A human? They were nothing compared to her kind. Soft skin, small bodies, short lives. How could such creatures even dream of standing in front of her? The idea felt like a joke, and yet the whispers grew louder. The stories carried through space. They said this human had already faced others stronger than himself. They said he fought with skill, with speed, with a mind sharper than any blade. They said he never gave up no matter how hard the fight. Still, she did not believe, until the day came when he stood before her. The arena was filled with thousands. Warriors, kings, slaves, and travelers from across the stars came to see. The air shook with noise as she walked forward, her armor shining under the alien suns. She carried her blade like a god carried fire. She was unstoppable, and then she saw him. He was small, too small. No thick armor, no giant sword, no glowing shield. Just a man with sharp eyes and steady hands. He looked at her without fear, without pride, without weakness. The crowd laughed at him. The other warriors shouted that this would be no fight, only a death. She almost laughed too, but something about the way he stood, the way he did not blink, made her pause. She raised her voice so all could hear. "You know my vow. You know my words. I obey only the one who defeats me. Are you ready to pay with your life for such a challenge?" He answered with only one sentence. His voice was calm, his words simple. "I did not come here to die. I came here to win." The crowd went silent. For the first time in years, silence filled the arena. She stared at him. This small human, this fragile creature, and for the first time in her life she felt curious. What gave him such confidence? What gave him such strength in his voice? She lifted her blade, heavy as thunder, and pointed it toward him. "Then fight, human. Show me if your kind has more than words." The drums of battle echoed. The gates locked. The fight was about to begin. She thought it would be quick. She thought it would be easy. But somewhere deep inside her, in a place she did not want to admit, there was a whisper that said this fight would not end the way she expected. Her vow hung in the air like a shadow. She had promised to obey only the one who could defeat her, and for the first time, there was a chance her promise would be claimed. The arena roared with sound. Thousands of voices shouted, laughed, and cursed. The alien queen stood tall in the center, her blade resting across her shoulder, her armor glowing in the light of two suns. She was ready, as always, to crush another fool who dared to face her. And then there was him, the human. He stepped forward slowly, not rushing, not shaking, not afraid. His boots echoed on the stone floor as if he had all the time in the world. The crowd shouted insults at him, but he did not answer. He did not even look at them. His eyes were fixed only on her. She narrowed her gaze. His size was wrong, his strength was lacking, and yet his presence was heavy like a storm about to break. Something about him felt different, though she could not explain why. "You are smaller than my shadow," she said, her voice carrying across the arena, "and yet you dare to stand before me. Tell me, human, why?" He did not smile, he did not bow. He only said, "Because you have never fought me before." The words struck like a spark. The crowd burst into laughter. Warriors pounded their weapons on the ground. Traders shouted bets, and no one placed money on the human. To them, the fight was already over before it began. But the queen did not laugh. Not fully. His words stayed in her mind, burning like a mark she could not wash away. The horn of battle sounded. She lifted her blade, heavy and sharp, glowing with old power. The human lifted nothing but a smaller weapon, simple in design, a tool compared to her mighty sword. The crowd expected her to finish him with one strike. They expected blood on the floor before the dust had time to rise. She moved first. Her speed was terrifying. Her blade cut through the air like fire through dry wood. She struck hard enough to split stone, but the human did not fall. He bent, slid, moved just enough, and the blade missed him by the width of a breath. Gasps filled the air. She struck again, faster, harder, but he kept moving, stepping out of reach, turning away from her strength, making her swing at nothing but air. For the first time in many battles, her strikes cut the ground and walls instead of her enemy. Sparks flew, dust rose. The crowd grew confused. How could he avoid her? How could something so small, so fragile, move in ways she could not predict? Her eyes narrowed. She had fought beasts twice her size. She had defeated warriors with strength to crush mountains. But this human, he was not fighting with strength. He was fighting with something else: patience, timing, calculation. Each time she struck, he did not panic. He did not waste energy. He moved only enough to survive, and every time he survived, her frustration grew. "You run," she growled. "You dodge like a coward." He finally answered, his voice calm even while he breathed hard. "I do not run. I learn." The words stung her pride. No one had ever spoken like that to her in a battle. No one had dared to call themselves her equal, not with so little power. And yet this human fought as though he believed his words. She attacked again, swinging with rage, her blade whistling like a storm wind. This time she thought she had him. Her sword crashed down, heavy as thunder, but the human stepped inside her swing, too close for her blade to matter. For a brief moment their eyes met. She saw no fear, only focus, only certainty. His smaller weapon struck her side. It did not pierce her armor, but it made her stumble. Her balance broke. The crowd gasped louder than ever. The queen staggered back a single step. But to the audience it was like watching a mountain tremble. For the first time in years, she had been touched. The human lowered his weapon slightly, his breathing steady, his eyes sharp. "I told you," he said. "You have never fought me before." The silence in the arena was heavy, pressing down on every watcher. No one laughed now. No one shouted. For the first time they began to wonder, could he win? The queen's heart beat faster, hotter. Rage and excitement burned together. She had wanted a challenge for years, and now she finally felt it. She lifted her blade again, her voice rising like fire. "Good. Then fight me with everything you have, human. Because if you do not, you will not leave this arena alive." The human only nodded, his stance ready, his eyes never leaving hers. The challenge had begun. The world would never forget it. And deep inside her, though she did not speak it aloud, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. Fear. The sound of the battle horn echoed again, long and deep, and the crowd leaned forward, waiting for blood. Dust rose around the arena, the sun blazing down on the stone floor. Two figures stood in the center, so different, so unequal in size, and yet locked in a fight that would decide both their fates. The alien queen tightened her grip on her massive blade. Her armor glowed with strange energy, her muscles tensed like steel cables. She had fought countless battles, but this fight was different. She did not understand why, but her heart beat faster than before. The human stood across from her, calm but alert, his smaller weapon held steady in his hands. For a moment, neither moved. The silence pressed heavy on the crowd. Then, like lightning, she attacked. Her blade swept through the air, powerful enough to split stone in half. The human ducked, sliding under the swing. Dust flew as her sword smashed against the ground. She turned, striking again, faster this time, but he was gone before her blade reached him, moving like water, flowing away from her strength. The crowd roared. Some shouted her name, cheering her on. Others shouted in shock at the human's speed. But he heard none of it. His eyes never left her. She swung again, her strikes faster, sharper. The air cracked with every blow. Each time she came close, so close the wind of her blade burned his skin. And each time he slipped away, his feet quick, his movements exact. He was not stronger. He was not faster. But he was smarter. He studied every move, every rhythm. He watched how her shoulders turned before a strike, how her breath shifted before she swung. He learned her like a book, line by line. And slowly he began to answer. When her blade came down, his smaller weapon struck her wrist, forcing her grip to tighten. When she swung wide, he stepped inside and touched her armor with his blade, leaving small marks that did no damage but showed control. Each little strike was a message. "I see you. I understand you," the queen growled, frustration burning in her chest. No one had ever lasted this long against her. No one had ever dared to treat her attacks as lessons. "You play games," she spat, her voice echoing. "But games will not save you." The human's voice was calm, though sweat ran down his face. "This is not a game. This is survival." Her rage exploded. She leapt forward, her sword crashing down like a storm. The ground shook under the force. The human rolled aside, dust covering him, but he rose again, ready, steady. Again she struck. Again he avoided. But this time he answered with a strike of his own. His weapon sliced through the strap of her armor. A piece fell to the ground with a heavy clang. The arena gasped as one. The queen froze for half a breath. No one had ever cut her armor before. The crowd shouted in disbelief. For the first time the human had drawn blood, not from her body but from her pride. Her eyes blazed. Her voice thundered. "Enough!" She launched forward with speed no one thought possible for her size. Her blade became a blur, each strike faster than the last, so fast the crowd could not follow. Sparks flew as her weapon struck the stone walls, the floor, anything in its path. The human was pushed back step by step. His breathing grew heavier. His arm shook under the weight of each block, each dodge. The queen pressed harder, her attacks wild but powerful. And then it happened. She swung wide, her blade crashing into the floor, leaving a crack in the stone. For a split second her guard opened. The human saw it. His eyes sharpened. His weapon flashed. He struck her side again, this time cutting through the thinner layer of her armor. A thin line of blood appeared on her skin. The arena fell silent. The queen's eyes widened. She looked down at the blood, bright against her pale skin. It was only a scratch, only a drop, but to her it felt like fire. No one had ever made her bleed before. The human stepped back, breathing hard, his weapon ready. His voice was low, but it carried across the silence. "You bleed like the rest of us." The crowd erupted in chaos. Some shouted in disbelief. Others screamed that the human would be killed for daring to wound her. But in the queen's heart a storm raged. She was not angry. Not fully. She was alive. For the first time in centuries she faced someone who could touch her. Someone who could challenge her. Her vow whispered in her mind. "I will obey only the one who can defeat me." She lifted her blade again. Slower this time, her eyes locked on the human. "This fight," she said softly, almost to herself, "is not like the others." The human raised his weapon, ready for whatever came next. The battle had only begun. The queen touched her side where the blood glistened. It was only a small cut, a thin red line across her skin, but to her it felt heavier than any wound she had ever carried. For centuries she had fought, and not once had another's weapon marked her flesh. Yet now, standing in front of her, a human, a creature smaller, weaker, and fragile, had broken the record of her invincibility. The crowd could not believe their eyes. The silence in the arena lasted only a heartbeat before it broke into wild noise. Some screamed for her to destroy him. Others shouted in disbelief that a human had touched her at all. The noise of thousands shook the walls, but the queen heard none of it. Her focus was on the man before her. He stood ready, his breathing heavy, sweat dripping from his face, but his eyes never lost their fire. He had struck her once, and in that strike he had shattered more than her armor. He had shaken her pride, her legend, her very vow. She tightened her grip on her blade. "You are clever, human," she said, her voice deep and steady. "But cleverness will not be enough. You cannot carry this fight forever. Your body will break before mine does." The human did not lower his weapon. He did not back away. His reply was simple, calm, and sharp. "Then I must break your will before my body breaks." The words struck her harder than any blade. For a moment she forgot the crowd, the arena, even the oath. She only thought of those words. Break her will? No one had ever dared to speak like that. Her anger boiled, but with it came something else. Respect. The battle resumed. She swung her weapon in arcs of deadly speed. Each strike made the ground tremble. Each blow forced the human to step back. But now she saw something different in him. He was not only dodging, he was reading her. He was studying every movement, predicting her strikes before they landed. Every time she thought she had trapped him, he slipped away. Every time she thought her blade would end him, he found a space no one else had ever seen. It was like he was fighting not only with his body but with his mind. Sharper than steel. The queen's strikes grew heavier, her arms burning with effort. She had fought for hours in the past, yet here she was, already feeling the strain. Her rage made her faster, but her speed left openings, and the human saw them. He moved inside her swing again, striking her shoulder. The blade did not pierce deep, but the pain shot through her. She growled, striking down with her full force, but he rolled away, dust flying around him. The crowd's cries grew louder. No one knew what to believe anymore. Was the queen losing? Could a human truly stand against her? The queen's chest heaved. Her pride screamed at her to end this quickly, but her warrior's heart whispered something else. For the first time she felt fear, but not the kind that froze her. The kind that made her alive, and then came the moment. She lunged forward, her blade rising high, ready to split the earth itself. The human's eyes sharpened. He waited calm, still, until the last instant. Then he moved. He ducked under the swing, sliding across the stone floor. With one precise strike, he cut across her leg just below the knee. The wound was shallow, but it made her stumble. Her body fell forward, her balance broken. The arena gasped as one. The queen dropped to one knee. For the first time in centuries, she had fallen. The human did not rush to strike again. He stood, his weapon ready, but his eyes watched her with care. He had not come only to wound her. He had come to defeat her. Truly defeat her. She pressed her hand against the ground, breathing hard. Her mind raced. Her vow echoed louder than ever. Obey only the one who can defeat me. Was this the moment? Was this the fight that would end her freedom, her legend, her untouchable pride? Slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes met his. There was no fear in him, no doubt. Only determination. Her lips curled into something strange, something she had not felt in years. A smile. Good, she whispered. Finally, someone worthy. She stood again, blood dripping from her wounds, her blade heavy but still burning with power. The crowd roared as she raised it high, but deep inside she knew the truth. The fight was no longer about victory. It was about survival. The human had turned the tide. The battle that began as her display of strength had now become her struggle to endure. And somewhere in her heart, though she would not admit it aloud, she knew. If this continued, her vow would soon be claimed. The arena was silent. Thousands of eyes stared at the queen as she rose slowly to her feet, blood shining on her skin, her chest rising and falling with every heavy breath. She had never looked like this before. She had always been untouchable, a goddess of war, a storm no one could survive. But now for the first time she looked human. And across from her stood the man who had brought her to this point. The human's clothes were torn, his arms shaking, sweat dripping down his face. His chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. He was not without pain. His body carried bruises, his movements showed strain. But his eyes were alive, sharp, steady. He was not finished. The crowd held its breath. Some wanted her to rise and crush him. Others wanted him to finish what he had started. But no one spoke. No one dared to break the moment. The queen tightened her grip on her blade. She lifted it again, though it felt heavier than ever before. Every strike she had thrown should have ended him, but he had survived. More than that, he had learned. Each time he faced her, he grew stronger, sharper. She growled, forcing her body forward. She struck again, her blade cutting the air. But the human was ready. He moved with precision, stepping just out of reach, letting her strength exhaust itself. She swung again, faster, desperate to end this, but he blocked at the perfect moment, his smaller weapon meeting her massive blade with exact timing. The impact rang like thunder across the arena. Her arm shook. He pushed back, and for the first time her blade slipped from her hands. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Her sword, her legendary weapon that had ended countless lives, fell to the ground with a heavy crash. The dust rose around it. She stared at her empty hands, her chest pounding. She could not believe it. She was unarmed. The human did not hesitate. He stepped forward, his weapon raised, but he did not strike her down. Instead, he stopped just short, his blade resting at her throat. His voice was low, steady, but it carried across the arena. "It is over." The queen froze. The words pierced deeper than any blade. She felt the weight of her vow pressing on her like chains. She had said it so many times. She had lived by it, fought by it, built her life around it. "I will obey only the one who can defeat me." And now, she had been defeated, her knees trembled. Her pride screamed to resist, to fight again, to rise and never bow. But her honor was louder. She was a warrior, and a warrior did not break a vow. Slowly, painfully, she sank to her knees. The arena exploded with sound. Thousands shouted in shock, disbelief, awe. The unbreakable queen had fallen. The undefeated warrior had been defeated by a human. She lowered her head, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. By my vow, by my honor, I am yours. The human lowered his weapon, but he did not gloat, did not laugh, did not claim her as a trophy. Instead, he stepped back, giving her space, showing her respect. You fought with strength, he said quietly. You fought with honor. And you lost with honor. That makes you greater than any who came before you. Her head lifted, her eyes meeting his. She expected arrogance, cruelty, or command. But she saw none of that. She saw respect and something deeper, understanding. Her heart twisted. She had expected chains if she lost. She had expected humiliation. Instead, she found something she had never known, dignity in defeat. The crowd did not understand. They shouted, they argued, they demanded blood, but the queen ignored them. Her world had shifted. Her vow had been fulfilled. She rose again, but this time not as a warrior standing tall above all others. This time she rose behind him, her loyalty bound, her honor tied to his victory. The human looked at her once more. You are free to walk away, he said. I do not want slaves. I want allies. Her chest tightened. She could not walk away. Not because of chains, not because of force, but because something inside her refused to leave him. She bowed her head. I will not leave your side, not now, not ever. The human said nothing more. He simply turned and she followed. The arena shook with noise, but none of it mattered. A promise had been fulfilled. A legend had fallen, and a bond stronger than steel had been born. The queen had been defeated, but in her defeat, she had found something far greater. The arena was still full of noise, but for the queen the sound had faded. She no longer cared about the shouting crowd, about the voices that demanded her death or her return to power. None of it mattered anymore. Her vow had been fulfilled. She had been defeated, and by her own code, her loyalty now belonged to the human who stood before her. She walked behind him as he left the arena, her steps slow but steady. Each movement reminded her of her wounds, of the cuts and bruises on her body, but she felt no shame. For the first time in her life, she felt something stronger than pride. She felt peace. The human did not speak as they walked. He carried himself with quiet strength, not as a conqueror, but as someone who carried a heavy weight. He had won the fight, yes, but he had also won her oath, and he understood what that meant. Finally, when they reached the silent halls beyond the arena, she spoke. You could have killed me, she said, her voice low. You could have taken my life and my legend. He stopped, turning to face her. His eyes were tired but calm. Killing you would have been easy. Earning your respect was the real victory. The words struck her harder than his blade had. She stared at him, trying to understand. He had no interest in power, no desire to humiliate her. He had fought only to prove himself, and in doing so he had changed everything. Her vow chained her to him, but her heart told her something different. She was not staying because of chains. She was staying because she wanted to. As days passed, the bond between them began to grow. He did not treat her as a servant. He did not order her to bow or to serve. Instead, he asked for her advice, her knowledge of war, her experience of worlds she had conquered. He listened, truly listened. No one had ever done that before. She found herself speaking more, sharing memories she had buried long ago. Battles that had broken her, victories that had left her empty, years of endless fighting that had made her strong but hollow. And he listened without judgment, without fear. In return, he shared his own stories, tales of humanity, of a world small compared to the vast empires she had known, yet filled with people who never gave up. People who struggled, who failed, who rose again and again until they succeeded. She began to see it. The same strength she had felt in him during the fight was the strength of his people. Humans were not the biggest, not the strongest, not the most advanced, but they had a fire inside them, a fire that never went out. It fascinated her. One evening, as they sat near the edge of the city where the stars burned bright in the sky, she asked him a question. Why did you fight me? You knew I had killed countless before you. You knew your chances were small. He looked at the stars, his expression calm. Because someone had to prove that you could bleed. Someone had to prove that even the strongest can be challenged. And if not me, then who? Her chest tightened. No warrior she had ever met had spoken like that. Most fought for glory, for power, for survival. But he had fought for something greater. For truth, for hope, for others. She realized then that her loyalty was no longer just a vow. It was a choice. From that day, she stood at his side not as a defeated enemy, not as a servant, but as a partner. When others mocked him for being human, she silenced them with a glare. When threats arose, she fought beside him with a ferocity that shocked even those who had once cheered her in battle. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. She had once believed her life would be endless battles, endless victories, endless loneliness. But now, for the first time, she felt like she was part of something larger than herself. The human had changed her, and though she would never say it aloud, deep in her heart she knew the truth. She would never leave his side, even if her vow ended, because loyalty built on honor could fade. But loyalty built on respect, on trust, and on something unspoken could last forever. And so the queen who had once belonged to no one now walked beside a human. Together they carried a bond that could shake the stars. The days after the battle turned into weeks, and the story of the queen's defeat spread across the galaxy like fire in dry grass. Worlds that once bowed to her power whispered in disbelief. Some laughed, saying it was impossible. Others trembled, afraid of what it meant. If even she, the undefeated queen, could fall, then perhaps no empire was safe. At the center of this storm stood the human and the queen, no longer enemies, no longer strangers. Now they walked together, bound by a vow, but guided by something greater: choice. Enemies came quickly. The queen's old rivals saw her defeat as weakness. Commanders who once feared her now saw an opening. They sent soldiers, assassins, and hunters to destroy her and the human who had claimed her loyalty. But none succeeded. When they came in the night, they found her waiting with her blade. When they sent ships to hunt them, the human strategies turned every trap into victory. Together they became something more than warrior and master. They became a force. The human's mind and the queen's strength balanced each other perfectly. She fought with fury. He guided with patience. She protected his life, and he gave her purpose. The galaxy began to see them not as a strange pair, but as a storm that could not be stopped. One evening, standing on the deck of a stolen ship, the queen looked out at the stars. She remembered the countless battles of her past, the endless blood she had spilled, and the throne of bones she had built. But for the first time, she saw something different in the stars: possibility. "You have changed me," she said quietly. The human stood beside her, his arms crossed, his gaze steady. "No," he said. "You chose to change. I only showed you what was possible." She thought about that. Once she had believed strength alone was enough to rule. Now she understood that true strength was not only in the body but in the will, in the choice to stand, to fight, to believe. Her vow still echoed in her heart: "Obey only the one who can defeat me." But now she realized something new. She was not with him because she was bound. She was with him because she wanted to be. News spread further. Alien leaders began to take notice. Some wanted to challenge humanity, to test this human who had defeated the queen. Others wanted to ally, to learn the secret of his strength. For the first time in history, humanity, once ignored as weak and unimportant, stood in the center of galactic attention. The queen smiled when she thought about it. Irony, perhaps. She had once been the terror of empires, the breaker of worlds. Yet it was a human, fragile in body but unbreakable in spirit, who had defeated her and changed the course of the stars. But challenges were not finished. Far away, greater enemies stirred, forces older and darker than any she had faced before, and she knew they would come. She also knew she would be ready, because she would not face them alone. Standing beside her, the human gave a small nod. He said nothing, but his presence was enough. Together, they had faced death in the arena. Together, they would face whatever came next. The queen placed her hand on the hilt of her blade. Once it had been a weapon for conquest. Now it was a weapon for protection, not for her glory, but for their future. She turned to him, her voice firm. "Where you go, I go. Whoever rises against you rises against me. This is no longer your fight alone. It is ours." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw a faint smile on his lips. "Then let's show them," he said. The stars stretched endless before them, filled with enemies and allies, with danger and promise. But together they stepped forward into that vast unknown. The queen who once swore to obey only the one who could defeat her was no longer a ruler, no longer a conqueror. She was something greater, an ally, a partner, a guardian of humanity's rise. And the human who had once been dismissed as weak was now a symbol across the galaxy, a reminder that strength is not measured by size or power, but by spirit, will, and the refusal to surrender. Their story was not ending. It was only beginning. The future awaited, and together they would shape it,